AI is rewriting everything. I'm here for the only question that matters. What stays ours? This is Going Human. The stone, the ripples, the fuckery. Community delivers the tsunami because robots can't.
Hi, welcome back to Going Human. My name is Moss, and here we go, episode 2, Souls in Our Systems. So I'm just going to set a stage for you first here today, and I'm going to put you in a room. You're in the emergency room of a hospital. Ambulance has just wheeled an elderly woman into the triage room. She's in critical condition, unconscious, and her blood pressure is crashing. The triage nurse is hooking her up to things, and as soon as she gets her hooked up, the screen lights up and says, sepsis, sepsis, sepsis. And the charge nurse reacts exactly as she's supposed to on script. She says, get him in a bed now, fluids, stat, all those hospital things that people say when they're in hospitals. But then the bedside nurse, the one who was there when the patient was first rolled in and who's been sitting by the bedside the whole time, says, no, look, there's like a dialysis catheter. This is a person who's got kidney failure. So I don't know what you know about kidneys, but kidneys allegedly are the organs in our bodies that pass all of our fluids through and filter our fluids of their toxins. And when you have kidney failure, those fluids don't go through that kidney; they just back up. So the charge nurse noticed that and knows that when your fluids can't go anywhere, they drown you. Said, no, we're not going to put this person on fluids right now because she'll drown. And then the floor nurse that said give her fluids right now said, no, you don't understand, we have to do it, we're saving this person's life. And the charge nurse said, no, we're not. There was a doctor nearby who heard this argument, and the doctor said, whoa, what's going on, people? Well, turns out that bedside nurse was right, and the doctor ordered some other medications to help with the blood pressure, and the patient was saved, not killed. So I just want you to sit with that for a little bit, because that is the premise of today's show. The machine was certain, the nurse was right, and the patient's alive because of a human. One human in that room refused to do what the machine was so certain they should do. So back to the scale. And I know this is very analog, but in the old days we had scales. Not even my old days, my grandfather's old days, but you get what I'm saying. Where the heavier thing weighted to the bottom, and that was the thing of the most value. But I don't measure AI on what AI can do or what it will do or what it can hope for at the end of the day. I really measure it how it is affecting humanity. What is it doing to us, toward each other or away from each other? Are we looking in each other's eyes, or are we looking in our own glass? So that's what today's show is about. It's what is in a system that a soul can make sure is working the way it's supposed to. And that brings us to our stone. Thank you so much for weighing in last week on our show. I've got some news for you at the end of this, but we're going to jump right in with our stone this week, which is the sepsis model. But I'd like to start with beat 1 on the stone this time to just share something personal. I was born in a medical family myself. I'm very passionate about medical systems and medical care because my father was probably among the more famous OBGYNs in the country. From his younger years, he was a diligent fighter of women's health care and the proponent for reproductive care, including birth control management and abortion rights for women at a time when women were dying by the thousands in streets, trying to figure out their own care. He's a brilliant, kind man who sat with his patients for 45 minutes, no matter what, and who remembered everything about each one of them every time they came in. My mom, when I was 11 years old, went back to school, and she earned her master's degree, became an RN, and then she was my dad's OBGYN nurse practitioner in his office for over 35 years before they retired. Mind you, my mom did this because she was a charge nurse herself as a young woman when she met my father. And she also, with my father, had 6 kids. So the youngest of 6 meant that I was 11, then I had a sister 12, another sister 13, a brother 14, a brother 15, and then another older brother who was 22. My mom had her hands full. But I tell you all that because I want to really illustrate a point a few different ways through this podcast. My mom sat me down once when I went after I had gone to the emergency room myself. I had some intestinal problems as a child, and I said, "Mom, why is the doctor not in the room with us? Why is it that it's always just me, you, and nurses, and then like way at the end the doctor comes in?" And she looked at me, and I'm going to paraphrase a little bit, but she looked at me and she said, "You know what, honey, if you want a fringe diagnosis, an academic approach to sort of the rubric of figuring out what's wrong, ask the doctor to come in the room. But if you want care, lean on the nurse." And I never forgot that because she's right. It's the witness, it turns out, that is the power in predicting outcomes in care, and not a machine, or not even an educated third party that's getting sampled information like a doctor does in that situation. So, nurses, they never look away. They can see every contraction in the delivery room. They can see blood pressure. They can see sweat on the brow. They can see panic in the eye. They see it all. And they bring all of that context in. And when the doctor comes in, they're talking in shorthand because the nurse knows what's going on. So I just want to make sure I put that down in beat 1 because it is really important. The nurse stays until the head crowns. The machine, it just takes a sample. So what overruled him, right? The epic sepsis model sort of rides in the chart. Michigan checked it. I've got some sources on this. It missed 2 out of 3 in judgment and cried wolf on 1 in 5. So, this 2021 study, still running 100+ organizations. The fix was slipped in quietly at the time, but in a lot of ways, it's still really a black box. We still really hope that the sepsis model is helping more than it's hurting. But at the time, 33% was the model's success rate, right? So that's not a flawed tool. That's just a coin flip in a lab coat, right? It's not really getting us to a closer standard of care. And that's obviously what a hospital is there for. But, before I continue, I just want to point out the obvious, which is that standard of care in hospitals is more and more about efficiency and less about touch. And in order to do that, you have to have systems, functional logical systems that can help relieve some of the burden. And as we talk today a little bit more about this, and as we bring on our guest for today, I just want to make sure I'm very explicit in saying the people who own, manage, run, develop, and deliver the systems that we're going to be talking about today are not the responsible people for the outcomes of what the systems are delivering. They are the carpenters. Um, in many ways, they act as architect, but especially in healthcare, the interest groups that drive these systems are variant and multiple. So oftentimes you have people arguing about what's really going to make a difference, and some are pushing things that are sacred cows for them, but are really not defensible in some instances. And so a lot of dissonance in the ways these systems get defined and designed. And then it's the carpenters who have to nail them all together and make them work and bolt them on and get them to optimize. So I just want to make sure I say that as we talk to our expert today, we're just going to be hearing all of the shenanigans that goes on when these systems are being built, and those are the faithful soldiers that are really keeping the disasters at bay. So now I'm going to sort of jump back into a different personal angle here, which is my operator angle, because I've been in the room when these sort of automate or not decisions have been made. And, I haven't been in the room when we were saving babies, to use my dad's phrase. But I've been in the room when we were doing things like speccing out miles of conveyor belt in a very large warehouse for, say, a company who you may have heard of, whose name rhymes with Isney, and when you're speccing out that conveyor belt, you really are relying on kind of this 80-20 rule, right? So 80% of the time, everything's going to go great, and 20% of the time, or up to 20% of the time, it can go bad, but we can live with it because we have remediation lanes and all that other stuff that makes the stuff that can't get put in the right things have a little depot to go to, and then we can pay one person to just go and triage those things. But in the meantime, 80% of our packages have gone through with no problems, right? So, we make those decisions in automation all the time, but we do it through the lens of widgets, right? If a widget falls on the floor, we sweep it up. If something that we're automating severs an arm, that's not an 80-20 rule decision, right? 80% of the time, no severed arm. 20% of the time, severed arm, probably not going to work. So, I like to say, you automate the stray widget. You don't automate the severed arm. I know that sounds funny, but it's kind of funny, right? Don't automate the severed arm. That's your lesson for today. So I see this sepsis model that we're going to talk about today as kind of a severed arm application, right? It's shipped like a widget. People are told to follow it. They're literally listening to the voice of a hospital tell them what to do in somebody's care based upon an algorithm that's sitting behind a bunch of data. One more thing I would like to point out in my response to the research and what we're presenting today is that the sepsis model is not pure AI through the lens of Claude and ChatGPT and the things that we've popularized as our avenues toward understanding AI. Sepsis is a model that was, it's essentially a predictive analytics tool, and it was built into the Epic EHR, which is, and the model itself is called the Sepsis Prediction and Optimization of Therapy, or SPOT model. Epic also called it the Epic Sepsis model interchangeably. Its core mechanic, really, it's just continuously running in a background. It's scanning data from the EHR, the something health record system, every 15 to 60 minutes. Intervals varied by hospital and how it's configured and all that stuff. But it uses vital signs, lab values, nursing flowchart data, medication orders, demographics, comorbidities. See, I'm human, and so I can't really pronounce things very well. But the score is generated by using a logistic regression model. It's not deep learning in the sense of sort of machine learning systems. but it is trained on Epic's large multi-institutional data set, which weights the inputs and produces a probability score, right? So that probability score, once it hits a certain threshold, is what told that floor nurse who's running around to 16 different beds in the same room, people in different states of criticality, and she sees sepsis and she makes her order. Sepsis makes the order. So she doesn't have time to sit there and go, okay, well, somebody told me what to do, and I've got 14 other people here that are redlining, but this person needs something, and the screen's telling me what to do. I'm going to do what I told it to do. The thing is that while this may not be AI, it is the bedrock of what some of the AI technology and what led to it. And it stands to reason that if we're in a world where AI is increasingly rewriting papers for us and helping us with our thinking, that the next step for the sepsis model could very well be a rational layer that sits on top of this epic model that says, okay, well, we're one step ahead. We can do something a little bit better with this data than the original model did. And so this is a discussion. We're here to discuss. Key criticism, though, and I realize that this is some old information, but like I said, after some of the old information came in, some adjustments were made that improved the model moderately, but the underlying scaffolding of the model remained. And there's still a bit of a black box here. But in 2021, UCF did a study that was published in the JAMA Internal Medicine peer review journal. And it found that that this model had poor sensitivity and specificity in real-world use, that it was missing a significant portion of sepsis cases while also generating high false positive alerts, right? And in a clinical setting, when you have a high volume of false positive alerts, you're also generating a higher increase in false positive alert fatigue, right? After a while, people will stop listening to what you are telling them to do anyway, and they will just be inserting their human touch. And so you're creating an environment of irregularity by trying to mechanize and automate something that you're trying to have create a consistent result. So false positives, not good. False positive fatigue, even worse, because it literally does the exact opposite of what you are trying to create. And so I also just want to make sure that the model doesn't diagnose sepsis in a clinical or legal sense. It flags the elevated risk, and then the clinician has to make a diagnosis. But remember, these are human beings that are on these floors, right? They went to school, some of them for decades, in order to get their credentials, which allowed them to do this care that they are passionate about doing and that they're delivering to people in real time every day. When you tell somebody, we don't always trust you and we're going to get to the answer faster without you, just do what the screen says, you're starting with a rolling eye, if you will. That person at the other end of that directive is saying, really? You've got to be kidding me, to begin with. And then when your model says 40 times sepsis, 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 but only about 31 of those times was it accurate, that person's eye roll turns into I'm not going to trust this at all. And so that's what happened in that hospital that day, in that emergency room. We had one nurse that was intent upon following the algorithm, and then we had another one who said, I have other information that the algorithm isn't seeing with their own eyes. So think about it missing the sick. It'll invent the well. And both times the only thing between you and that mistake is a human who might know you, right? And this beat is more about some of the other things that AI is directly doing. So many of you have gone to the doctors lately, and a nurse has come in before the doctor, and they've said, I'm going to be having my records management system record this, and we'll be writing the care notes up that we talk about. Is that okay with you? And so you consent, and you continue with your exam. The doctor does the same thing. It's actually a bit of a miracle in a lot of ways, because it means the doctor isn't typing and menu hunting and doing all the things that they were doing on their very elaborate systems while they're trying to hear your story. But it's also something that's taking transcription, right? That transcription is having to transcribe voice into text, and then the AI model is taking that voice to text transcription and turning it into meaning, right? Helping it understand what's happening. And it is not uncommon, and has not been uncommon, for these systems that are doing the scribing to mischaracterize things that are said because it misses body language and many of the other conversational cues that happen. But in some extreme situations, parts of conversations that never even happened got snuck in because of the lack of guardrails in some of the AI systems, especially as they were first being implemented. So I just illustrate that because that's an example of something that is peeking in to healthcare management and administration that stands to really help remove the friction between care and documentation. So here we are back at the scale, right? Everything is aimed right. Everything is well rationed, well reasoned, well guarded, guardrail wise. It'll save lives, and it's real. If it's aimed wrong, or the authority didn't get earned, or there's no witness in the room to say, it's not going to happen, right? So there's a little bit of hope here. There's a federal commission, the MACPAC. I'm sure I could find what that all means in a note here somewhere, but I won't bore you with it. But this is a ruling. It's not a law yet, but it's a ruling that will get introduced that basically says that voted unanimously to keep the human directly tied to the no. And in this case, the no was Medicaid and federal access to medical care for poor people. People were getting denied by AI decision rubric and just told go away. And the MacPac found that the error rate on these no's was catastrophic, and that the incidence of no was on an accurate sense far below its inaccurate sense. And so it became very clear that the yeses were strongly filtered and were well qualified, but the no's were very badly judged. So again, we've got a situation where our systems are telling smart people what they should be thinking, and they could be right, but they're often not perfect. And are we a widget, or are we a severed arm? And where is that person that is in the room to keep us safe and sound? The fix isn't smarter machines. It's keeping a soul in the system, allowed to say no, and trusted when they do. This is why I needed to talk to Jen. With Jen alone, but also in a social setting with many of her colleagues. Jen has spent 23 years in healthcare IT. She's spent 11 of those running teams that directly interact with and do product management and deployment for clinical content and workflow inside of Epic's umbrella systems. So, for me to say that she is a soul inside of this machine, it's a true understatement. But I want to say she is not the medical provider in the room. She's not that floor nurse that said no, but she is the the person who interacts with the architects, the business requirements, and the output heuristics of what it is that she delivers. And so she is a common voice. The people that I met at her event are the common voice. They are the strength behind her institution's well-hewn guardrails, and it's just it's a delight to have you here, Jen. Thank you so much for coming. You know where the judgment's hidden in this software, and you also know what it can cost when somebody automates it away and it doesn't work. So thank you very much for joining us. I'd love to ask you, just as you heard my introduction about the stone and some of the information that I shared, and if you put yourself in that room as a human soul, and that was your mother, and you were just sort of a fly in the room, but couldn't talk, and you saw your mother wheeled into that hospital, and you know that she had that kidney dialysis catheter in her collarbone, because you're somebody who probably has to flush it 3 times a week, or however often you have to flush that stuff to make sure it works. When you saw her wheeled into that room and you saw the interaction and you were floating in the air, what were you thinking?
I think what I was thinking, at least when you're sharing the story, that is true. That's reality. Whether it is information coming from the machine where you make the decision, or it's just the information that I know as an expert, there's still a judgment call. And you have to do what makes sense. It can't just all be what the paper says, if that makes sense. Yeah. It's really different when you're not in that IT space and you're actually in that room with your loved one, because I've been there, both with my mom and my dad. It's very different. And when I look at, because I work in IT, I see that computer there. I want the healthcare provider interacting with my loved one and taking care of them. That machine is secondary. And, you talked about that ambient listening sort of concept where you go in and you meet with your provider and it documents the encounter for you. That technology, and so we've had electronic health records for many years, and it's all been about that IT. That has, in my mind, just watching it unfold over the years, it has created a distance between the provider and their patient. What I'm seeing with this artificial intelligence layer is it's giving us an opportunity to bring that relationship back. My provider can focus on me. They don't have to worry about the 10 million things that they are required to document.
Right.
Because you have to document it in a very specific way so that predictive models actually work. They can pull the right information. So it's about how the information goes in.
Hold on. My cat automatic feeder just went off, and my cats are going to jump through the screen. Okay.
Well, they should jump.
I'm sorry to interrupt. We have to feed our cats.
I'm surprised I don't have any here. So what's going on?
It's going to make this sound for the next 5 seconds. Hold on.
Oh, look at that.
Can you see him back there?
Yeah.
Faithfully waiting by their automatic cat feeder.
For what it's worth, I don't really hear it.
One more time. Here it comes. Last one. Wait for it. Did you hear that?
Uh-huh.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's it. They're so cute. I love my kitty cat so much. Okay. Wow, that was a bit of a departure. Okay, Jen. What were you saying? So you're heralding the advent of presence in a room by a caregiver in the form of a professional who you have to trust, who you get to have, but whose attention is divided in those moments, right?
Yep.
And so this scribe level application of AI can be a really brilliant way, as you say, to bring that connection back together and to have the provider stay in the room. Yeah.
Yep.
Um, Tell us a little bit more about sort of your journey in EHR and with the system specifically, and like what are some of the things that have come across your desk over the years? I should point out that Jen is now at a place and a level in her career and in her organization where she's earned the badge of sort of team ownership, right? She's the person who grabs talent from all over her network and every other person's network who she trusts, and she qualifies them and brings them in not only to her own organization but to other organizations that are satellites to her, through which she either benefits or is an input or an output. And so her interaction model in her day to day is more about making sure that the people who are the souls in these machines are thinking about it with a passionate lens and making sure that their best foot goes forward in the delivered results. So just want to make sure I said that. But Jen, like, if you help us out with some of those things that have come across your desk in the many years that you've been dealing with this.
Well, this is actually more of a personal story, but it kind of set me on the road of trying to think about how do we make our electronic health system add more value to what we do. And so this example, it's a story a friend told me years before I met her. She ended up being diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, but she got ahead of it and survived. It was caught early. If you catch pancreatic cancer early, you can treat it. But most of the time, it's progressed so far that there's nothing you can do.
Right.
Well, she had noticed some symptoms, and her partner got her a Groupon. Remember Groupons back in the day? That's how long this.
I love where this is going.
Right?
Did it involve a mani-pedi?
No, but it did involve a naturopath, right? So
Okay.
she had so she went and she did this visit, and the naturopath got really curious and said, "Give me your health records, everything that you've been going through. I want to look through all of that." So she's got this big stack of paper. This provider took the time to go through everything, and then had called my friend back and said, "Hey, I believe you are showing symptoms of pancreatic cancer and you need to deal with this immediately." And
Yeah,
so she
good.
did. And what my thought was, how many providers out there have the time, just even have the time that they can take to go through all of that? And that's what we want when we pay for a provider and we pay for healthcare. That's the level of detail and expertise you want. But
Right.
the reality is, we we have to see many patients. You have a schedule. You have to end your appointment so that the next person can come in. So it starts getting really prescriptive like that. And in the system I work in, that is very much a model. You have certain lengths of appointments, and you have to meet that, and you're measured on that. Metrics drive behavior, so
Yeah.
you're measured by that.
Right.
So how close of that conversation do you actually get with your provider? I am also in IT, and I know how incredibly difficult it is to build tools that can actually mine that data between disparate health systems who may capture that in a different field name, in a different structure. So how do you then marry that data together to make any kind of assessment? And that's where I see AI coming in. It can actually do that, where you can take unstructured data and make sense out of it. But to your point, how accurate is it? And then when you start having your AI looking at that data, when it starts to degrade its model and start looking back at what it told you, how do you as that human know what to look out for to make sure that it's accurate or not? So I've kind of went a little circular there, but it's important, but it's also important for us to figure out and make sure that it's not giving us the wrong thing. Most of my IT work is not actually in the building of the systems. It's like you said, I'm leading and managing the people, and I'm trying to understand what those problems are. I have to then sell my ideas to leadership at times. That's an area that has always been a struggle for me. And you've got the format, you say XYZ and, or an S bar, for example. So there's a certain rubric, but you still have to put that down on paper.
Yep.
And when you're in a leadership role, you usually have 50 million other things hitting you. So it's hard to concentrate and think. So I have been absolutely abusing the hell out of Copilot, and I have it write those documents for me, but it can do it in such a clear, crisp way. It's accelerating my ability to have decisions made. And I think that's going to be one of our biggest barriers is we've got so much information coming at us. How can we as humans not be that bottleneck, but actually ingest it, use it, and move forward? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, I love that I really thank you for bringing that last bit of your chat experience, Copilot experience, and the benefits that it's bringing. Because there is this. I'm sorry, there's a cat about to jump. I need a recording studio. That's what I really need.
No, the cat's perfect. It adds that perfect touch.
The
It makes you human.
our our ability to deliver decision support in our own minds, just to organize thoughts in our own minds when we've got so much going on, becomes really hampered. And I'm the same way. It's not like I have AI writing my emails for me and I just don't look at them. But I spend a lot of time documenting my own software systems myself, asking my AI Claude to go through code, and to document my code that is running my production system. Now, Claude is generating almost 100% of the code that it's documenting, but Claude is documenting it accurately because it's from code. So in a lot of ways, while I'm a non-coder relying on Claude to help me write the code, I'm relying on Claude's summary of what the code is doing, which is mechanical, to help me ensure that what I've built is what I've architected.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I really just wanted to share. That's my dog that is now getting antsy. I have a farm animal problem in my home.
I can relate.
So anyway, I just really loved that you brought that in. Do you have any, since we haven't said anything about where you work or anything, do you have any gory stories that you want to share, even if it was like from before your epic days?
Well, I think it's interesting that you're talking about the sepsis model. So a few years ago, I managed a team that was responsible for rolling that out in the EDs. Um, and I really should be careful with how I say this, but we are an Epic shop. We actually chose to roll out an internally developed version of it because our providers did not trust the outcomes of that Epic model. It was too new. Today, I think that it's much better. It's probably a lot more accurate, but at the time, it was not giving us what we needed. And it gets to that issue of all the different systems capture the information a little bit differently, right? And so, how do you pull that all into a predictive model to do that analytics?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love what you said about kind of like the tools that are gathering the information, and this idea of sort of slugs that help you point to a specific table, column, and row in a database that is the harvestable data that these models will use, that will get us from I don't know what the Sam Hill to do to here's your decision, and getting that slug mapping to happen not only intelligently but with 100% accuracy is the underpinning of all of this. So it's really interesting. Okay. So I'm going to back up. I'm going to ask you to. I'm sorry that I interrupted you because you were onto something there. Okay, Jen, bring it back. Tell me again what you were just saying about the about Epic and the fact that it is a system that you're working on and where your focus is on it.
So the predictive model. So um, the cool thing about Epic is they're constantly developing and taking feedback and reiterating. But oftentimes, the first version of what we'll get from them, we've got to work through bugs. And and so probably around the same time as the study you quoted, I would say we were looking at implementing that model into some hospitals that I'm responsible for. And our providers were not really bought into that model because of the accuracy. And we have our own internal, we're a very large organization, so we've got a data and analytics team. And we actually did our own homegrown sepsis predictive modeling in one of our markets. And so the market I was responsible for, we opted for ours. We trusted it more. That is changing. Epic is getting much better. And we have different technology available. So a lot of that discrete data mapping still important today, but we're getting and developing more and more tools that can look at unstructured data and connect it together and analyze it and make decisions.
Yeah, great. Um, you know the point of the cast and the glory of your attendance on it today is really the discussion, and it's really it's warming to hear a logical brain like yours articulate the value and acknowledge some of the you know cracks in the pavement that is a part of IT evolution, right? Things don't get better because we're afraid of them. We have to meet their challenges head on.
Yep.
In a world where we want humans to matter less and less, we're not paying people what they deserve or need to live, and we make money and advance our own financial aspirations in ways that are often very singularly focused and have nothing to do with the people that are left behind when these things are delivered. So, just culturally, we in IT are often faced with taking problem spaces and finding solutions for them. That's a cat tail, by the way, if you're watching this on YouTube. And so the distinction is it's an important one. The builders, us carpenters out there that are trying to take your business requirements, even us architects who are understanding sort of problem spaces and building solutions around them. We want nothing more than to do something that is wildly brilliant and perfectly optimal. And just like the person on that retail system distribution center floor that has miles of conveyor belt and who's dealing with that widget that fell off the conveyor belt. In IT, we're faced with our own resource limitations, where we've got multiple stakeholders that are often arguing about what it is we're to be delivering and how it's going to come out. So there's a lot of juggling that happens, and it's just really great to have your perspective on the show, Jen. Really love it. Really love it. Okay, so here's how I would land it, and then I'm going to ask you to sort of tell me what you think about it. The machine should get the busy work. The work that is not adding any human value, right? A doctor that decides where to put 5 words in a field on a screen in a system so that he's compliant for all of the regulatory needs of every single chart that goes through every single system, right? That is busy work. Now, does that guy get to think about what's happening with somebody's chest when he's listening to it on a stethoscope? Yeah, he does. But if 60% of his attention is worrying about slugs and what data goes into which field, we're no longer talking to the provider at the same level that we were when we didn't have the systems. So yeah, the machine gets the busy work, but never the authority to overrule the one watching the patient.
Yep.
How's that land with you?
It lands really well. I 100% believe that. I want the provider to validate whatever the machine heard and put in there. I want them to say that it's correct before it gets logged in perpetuity in my electronic health record, in my personal record.
Yeah.
And I think every human should feel strongly about that. It is challenging to get the wrong diagnosis removed from your record. There's just a lot of work you have to do working with different departments, et cetera. So you want
Well,
it right.
yeah. I mean, challenging over time, right? But what about the wrong diagnosis when there's no time?
Yes,
Right?
there's that too.
Like,
Absolutely.
it'd be great. Oh, you have a cold. No, it's a flu. Okay, I'll take 6 months to remove the flu diagnosis. But it's like, oh, you have pancreatic cancer. Oops. It takes, it's like,
Yeah.
so while it's comforting to know that even with a lot of effort, you can change a diagnosis that's wrong. You really want the diagnosis to be right, and you want the speed to diagnosis to be lubricated, and that's what we're hoping. The speed to an accurate diagnosis is going to require a really careful dance between technology and human in order for us to optimize healthcare.
Yep.
Okay, well, an AI that hands you an actual human instead of a glowing rectangle. This is the first in a long series of fuckery that we're going to go through tonight.
Okay.
As my audience knows, Jen, we have what I call the maelstrom. This is the crazy part of AI in the last week, where I pull some stories and I just sort of expose you to an opinion about them, and I ask you for your opinion about them. But basically it goes like this: fuck yes, fuck no, and fuck maybe. And the fuck yes and the fuck no, that's all just you and me riffing, right? But on the fuck maybe, we're going to riff, and at the end, I'll point everybody to my website. The website has the ability to take a vote, your thumbs up or thumbs down, fuck yes or fuck no, and add comments. And from time to time, I'll read the comments, but every week, I'll give everybody an update of where we landed on the fuck maybes. Okay. So the fuck yes is a beautiful one, and there's going to be more and more of these coming out. The ones that either warm your heart or that make you think that we're really in a place where things are going to change positively. Hold on one second. Things change positively. So Eldera, this is a system that that matches people over 60s with kids who are somewhere between 14 and 18, I can't remember, to just have conversations. So this is AI that finds ways to match people with special or specific interests into conversations that create a connection and an interaction model that is based only in humanity. So it's just about the facilitation part. They do these calls weekly, and 94% of these matches that happen continue talking well over a year. So, this is it's AI that's been specifically targeted toward the loneliness epidemic. And it's taken those that are probably the most vulnerable in loneliness and matched them with people who have the most energy, and have enough going on so that the conversation can keep flowing and new things can come to people, right? If I'm 68 years old, don't ask me how close I am to that age already. If I'm 68 years old and I talk to somebody like you and I are just geeking out about what we geek out about, and we know how to
Mm-hmm.
talk about it, and it's like blah, blah, blah. And our friends sit around us and go, God, won't they ever shut up, and blah, blah, blah. Well, Eldera does this in a way that makes it so that these older people get to ask kids what they're doing these days. Okay, Eldera, it's matching, these people, and it's keeping the conversation going. And it's just heartwarming to know that this is an option and that people are engaging with it. So that's my first fuck yeah. I wanted to ask you
Yeah.
what you thought about it.
I like it, and I like it because it is bringing people together. So it's an actual relationship and connection.
Yeah.
I resonate with that stuff.
Yeah, me too. Me too, me too. Okay, so now for the fuck no. We might even swear more during this section, Jen. I don't know. I've got a potty mouth. You probably want to, you're probably like all self-conscious about that for professional reasons. But
Yeah.
I really like this one because I live, die, breathe all day, every day. And I work hard, 10, 15-hour days, most days of every week. Most every day of every week. And I work with Claude. Claude is a product that comes from a company named Anthropic. Claude has sort of three anchor products. One is Chat, which is sort of that same interface that you think of with ChatGPT, where you ask it to draw a picture of a dog farting in August, and all of a sudden you get a weird picture. So it has the capability to do that stuff. It has a thing called Claude Code, which is the equivalent of Copilot on the ChatGPT side. It also has this thing called CoWork, which is a way to sort of build workflow automation and scripting into repetitive tasks that use sort of a skills paradigm. And so I live, breathe by this technology all the time. Well, last week, a week and a half ago, Anthropic released its most powerful model ever, and it's incredible. Like when I used it, I was like, oh my God, I could take over the world with this thing. It was only live for a day and a half. I used it for that entire time because I was using it anyway. I was using the product anyway, and and then they shut it down. And you went and you looked at the little why they shut it down thing, and it was all the government said we're shutting it down, and this is what we're using to defend ourselves. This is how we're talking about it as a company. But really, what happened was a hacker was able to crack the thing, and they got the guts of this AI prompt downloaded and exposed it to the world. Right, so a huge regressive leak of information that could be very, very volatile. And in a world where we're not governing AI and its output, this got very scary, right? And the reason I'm putting this in the fuck no category, Jen, is because Anthropic was the parent in the room. Right? Anthropic is the company that came at AI with as much altruism as you could possibly hope for in a realm where everybody's racing to hopefully not the bottom, but to the best, to be the best. But oftentimes people end up racing to the bottom because they just want to be the first with the best and the greatest. And Anthropic was intoxicated by this. They went out a little too soon, in my opinion, and they didn't lock their shit down so that a hacker was able to expose a vulnerability and take advantage of it. I'm glad the government pulled it, given what I know about this situation, but I wanted to ask you sort of your thought. Is this a fuck no for you too, or where are you on it?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's a fuck no. There has to be responsibility around this technology. These tools are so powerful.
Right.
It, yeah. So I'd say fuck no.
Yeah. Good. It's not a hacker story, right? It's not a hacker story, but it's an Anthropic story. It's a startup story, really, right? And to your point, these systems are very powerful, and we can't keep our own hand on the levers of these systems if we don't have some guardrails on them. And have always been a big fan of regulation and somebody above the people who are making money making the decisions, because
Yes.
putting the people with the pocketbooks in charge of their own safety is a dangerous proposition. So, yeah, the responsible people in the room got to stay responsible. Anthropic, this seems like a place where you might have dropped the ball, and an important one. I regret that it happened, and it would be really heartwarming to hear that somebody caught this and it got out at a time when you could contain it, and you can still release that model with the right guardrails on it, because it really is a strong delivery. It was really, really good. Okay, so here's our fuck maybe for the week. Are you ready?
Yep.
So you know that guy Bernie Sanders? So I love me some Bernie. I think he's just a really good guy. He's one of the few on the Hill in our great nation who just tirelessly thinks about the impacts of the real humans that are powering America, and who's not corporate, who's not bought and sold from a corporate perspective. Well, he came up with this idea that if over time America could own 50% of each of the big players in AI, that we would be able to create an accountability framework that would essentially make us shareholders, right? So as shareholders, we would be able to say where AI is going. Well, that kind of sounds good, right? It's a very populist message. And so I'm going to ask you about that message. But first, I'm going to tell you that like a week and a half later, one of the other politicians in our government today, whose name rhymes with rump, he came out with a proposition that it should be 10%. And in his own words, it's a beautiful thing. But of course, there was no detail around his, no rationale, but he just sort of likes to make sound bites. But Bernie put a compelling thing out there, a compelling proposition, and some accompanying rationale. I'm wondering what you think about that one, Jen. This is our fuck maybe. Like, where do you think this goes? I've already sort of shared mine, but I could go either way.
Honestly, I have never thought about this, so I got to wrap my head around it. It's
Fair
a
enough.
different kind of concept. I do think that if we are invested in something, and well, I got to take that back. It depends on the person, right? So for me, I like it. I want to be invested in my future. I would want to be able to influence responsible AI. And what I mean by that, it's not even just using the technology itself, it's how we build this technology. Because we've heard of all of the things happening with data centers and water quality and pollution. How do we get ahead of that? And so, from an investment perspective, that's where I want us to consciously be thinking. How do we make it clean? How do we make it renewable? It's not going away. And so you can say, well, I don't believe in what they're doing with data centers, so I'm just never going to use AI. You're probably using AI today and you don't even know it. It's not going away. It is not going back in the bag. It's out.
Fair enough.
So what can we do? And it's it's true for just about any technology. Think about TVs. Remember when put them in the landfill and they're causing problems?
Yeah.
So we always have to be conscious of how enabling our society can potentially damage it. So how do we avoid that?
Right. I love that you brought up the TV thing, but I would even go, one step before that to just, plastic single-use bottles.
Plastic garbage bags. Yeah, or
You know,
or bottles.
Like,
Yep.
we haven't figured out anything. What we figured out is cravings for more. We know how to get people to crave more than they have. And we found ways to inject it into these cravings so that people can feel satisfied from it. But the negative outcomes and or the danger points that are inherent in anything that is novel, right? Those guardrails have to be thought of and erected first. So from that perspective, I couldn't agree with you more. Now I'm going to argue your point a little bit because, let's just say you and I own a 50-50 ownership share of a widget company, right? And you're an environmentalist, and I'm a capitalist, which in America, especially in their most extreme senses, are diametrically opposed to pretty much everything, right? And at the end of the day, we have a board of directors that are sitting behind us, and we're at a public company, right? And that board of directors have a fiduciary responsibility to only make money in a public company, right? They're not. This is not a B Corp situation.
Yep.
So we could be sitting there talking to them, and you could say, "Ooh, the point of environmentalism is the TVs. Remember when we did that, and then all of a sudden the fishies started dying in the marshes around the dumps, and blah 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 blah." Well, so there's that, right? And then I'll be like, "Well, yeah, but we can get fish from anywhere in the world, right? We got to deliver this stuff because your stock price is going to go up $40 per share overnight if we do." And when a board of directors hears that, and they know that they're bound and sworn legally to a fiduciary responsibility that says that they can only have one consideration, and that's the bottom line, guess who wins?
Yeah, bottom line.
Right. So on an ownership level, I'm just gonna. I know this is probably not professional, but my dog has to go to the bathroom, and if I don't entertain him for the last portion of this show, I'm not going to be able to finish it. So he's going to join us. This is Kodak, by the way.
This is the new professional. You have to have a pet in your video.
You have to have it's a whole thing. Anyway, yeah, that's a microphone, honey. So the point is ownership, and my sense of this is that the point counterpoint, the fiduciary responsibility thing, all of that stuff that is driving us, in my opinion, it's improving stock prices and it's growing our GDP, or has up until very recently. All that stuff is happening, but it's not good for the planet and it's not good for human beings, right? So giving that power to the people as kind of a socialist idea, right? So that they have their thumbs on the scale of what drives tax revenue, right? That is a romantic idea, and I love it. But I don't want the government to be making decisions based upon the profitability of a product that is so pivotal, And I think in my mind, this is where my brain goes. Make it all owned by the government, so that it's not a profit thing. The government can take an abstracted view of value in terms of how it delivers to the populace, right? And say, you know what, if we get 60% of the people who meet these conditions, who are getting public assistance, and we can get them into houses and get them into jobs using this technology, we don't need a profit from it, because what we're doing is we're helping our tax we're creating a reduction in our tax burden as a country.
Yeah, not only that, then you're also building up that societal value.
Right.
People are happier. They get to participate. They're not just trying to make sure they have food on the table. They can actually participate in society today. I feel that way about internet. Internet should be just available, like it's a public service.
Yeah, I agree. So the ownership thing for me is regulation and mandates, right?
Hmm.
For me, I say we have to find ways to exact and exert mandate-based objectives on AI that solve real problems and that have nothing to do with Elon Musk's ability to wave a wand and do crazy shit, right?
And
I
have
don't I don't care if it's I don't really care how cool it is or how inventive it is. What I care about
what
is,
value does it bring
yeah, we've got
society?
problems.
Hmm.
We still can't recycle a fucking plastic Coke bottle. We can't do
Nope.
that today.
Nope.
We generate millions of them every single day and we don't know what to do with them, right? But is that
Hmm.
are we doing is there a body of the government who's out there trying to solve the single-use plastic problem?
So have you,
I think they've been
gosh,
shut
where,
down. I think that was maybe
totally.
something that rhymes with "oge." But go on.
I totally, I don't remember the details. We'll have to look at it. But a group of kids won an award for developing something out of tamarind, I think, that actually eats plastic. It eats it.
See,
That's pretty creative.
I believe that children are our future, Jen.
Yes, they
Teach
are.
them well and let them. I'm sorry, am I
Mhm.
quoting Whitney Houston
You
now?
are. Yep.
Okay, I'm not going to do that. This is a podcast. We're being very informative. Okay, well that's the fuckery for the week, and I'm looking forward to getting my scoring system up and running this week. We had some problems with it last week. I'm having to do some bug fixes on my system that I've written to do all that. So in the next day or two, you'll be able to vote. And the vote on last week's, which was the massage in the room with you, the robot that was doing the massage, sort of,
Mm-hmm.
the point of it was really a robot touching you with metal warmed up arms and then the counterpoint of it was access. What if people have traumas and or just wouldn't otherwise
Mm-hmm.
get any of the therapeutic benefits of massage because of their own response to being with a stranger. And so the overwhelming response was on the counterpoint side. The winner there was that it's probably more valuable for people to have access to it. Those who do want the personal touch can still adopt it. But to be able to have something that could effectively do a therapeutic massage that could eliminate some of the trauma was something that people really resonated with people. So that was the vote there. Okay, so we're tying things down now. The last couple minutes here is just our tsunami and our sign off. So this week, our tsunami is I want everybody to think about doing one thing that they take for granted is done automatically. So even if you have to duplicate it. So if you have an email that comes in with a appointment reminder, with a meeting set up, a Zoom or something like that, and you've got it automatically set up to put it on your calendar and insert the link and all that stuff, recognize that this week. Go in that one time that you see that come in and just make that digital record yourself by hand. And just recognize that there's something behind your machine that's doing something that you might take for granted or that you might just sort of not think is a big deal. But every single one of those things that's happening behind the scenes is adding up for you, and it's helping, right? But what we can't lose sight of and what we can't blur is the accumulation of all of these things and the ways that they become de rigueur for us, right? We need to be making these decisions consciously. The mundane example I just made about the appointment, about the Zoom call coming in and your email and having, that seems really mundane, but you know, you don't even have to be as old as me. Jen's quite a bit younger. To know that you know, these things weren't so long ago. We had to do it all on paper. You know,
Hmm.
like
There was no busy searching a calendar. You were
no,
making phone calls.
yeah.
Are you available?
No, are you available?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll call you
Yeah.
back after the 9 other people I have the same conversation with tell me
Uh-huh.
18 different things, and then I'll tell
Yep.
you. Yeah. So yeah, do something manual. Anything that's automatic, do it manually, and just say, "Wow, okay, things have come a long way. This is my humanity. I'm applying myself." It'll just give you a perspective, and I would love to hear your comments on my website about that as well. So, to tie it all down, we have a nurse who beat a system that runs half the hospitals in the country because he was present and trusted himself. And you have that same instrument. So think about it. One person trusting their own eyes does nothing. A million of us refusing to be overruled by a confident machine. That's our tsunami. And I think that that's how we have to think about the evolution of these important and groundbreaking systems as we move forward. Okay, this is the end. I'm going to ask you to follow and subscribe. That means a lot to me as I'm growing my base. Go ahead and vote on your sort of government owns AI premise from Bernie Sanders, and you know, send this to somebody who's stuck in a system. You know, if you know somebody who's stuck in a system or frustrated by a system, share this conversation. This cast is about the conversation. It's not about shutting technology down or lifting it up. It's about thinking about how we're intersecting with it. I'm Moss. This is Going Human, because robots can't. Back next week. Thank you for listening.